Kathy here from Eclectic Images, and thank you for joining me today. Now, the project I'm going to do today is an off-the-page one, so I'm going to be using a beautiful timber lantern and decorating it up with some decorative papers and then adding some other elements in there as well. It's a bit of a process, but it's really worth it because what you create is so beautiful. Okay, so to start with, our lantern is made by a company called Cobwebbs Craft Studio over in Perth, and they do quite a lot of plywood, both just sort of flat shapes as well as three-dimensional pieces that you can decorate. I do have the lanterns in stock on my website, but you can also go to Cobwebbs Craft Studio and see their full range. Okay, so let's have a look at some of the things we're going to be using. So this is the kit for the lantern. And so yes, it's, as you can, when we go back to the full shot, you can see the ones behind me, they are a good size. So that's a couple that Jackie and I have already decorated up. Sorry, Matthew, let's go back to the products. Okay, so we've got that. We're also going to be using 12 by 12 papers, so 2 sheets of paper for doing the decorating. The one here I've got here is from Bee Arty, and it's in the Wild at Heart collection, and the pages are called Paradise. Also going to be using some chipboards from Scapbooking'n'Craft. Again, these are on our website. And then to do some painting, we'll be using the Mont acrylic paints. Now this is the set of 24 12mm tubes, which is a great way of having a good selection of colours, but also, as I've found, I've very quickly learnt the colours that I use most, so I'd prefer to buy next time in larger sizes. But this is great just to have a great selection to test out and see what are the colours that you do use most. Our adhesives, we've got the Turbo Tacky glue by Couture Creations and also the Mont Deco Pudge. We're also going to be using, I think I'll do a bit of extra decorating using a stencil from Scapbooking'n'Craft, and also some beautiful star foil paper. Now this is available from Craftzone. It's not something that I stock, but it's beautiful because it causes the light to refract. So once you've put your lantern together, let's cut to a big shot, Matthew, and I'll just show. So you can see, I'll just grab one of the lanterns here and bring it forward, and you can see, actually no, I'll grab the other one because that one's not as clear. This one here. This one I've got a bunch of fairy lights in it, and you can see, if I show you on the side where I've got just plain vellum, you just see a bit of a glow of light. But the side that has the star foil, can you see how all that light refracts, creating that beautiful star effect? So that's just fairy lights in there, and that's the effect of using the star foil paper on the front. Okay, so let's go back and start actually doing some making. Now I've already glued together my 2 base bits, and I'm now going to glue together the top parts. So I'll put some of the bits to one side. Okay, so the bits are labelled top and base, and I'm going to get the Turbo Tacky glue and just run it around the edges here. I don't want to have it going into those grooves as yet. We don't want any glue in there until we're ready to be gluing the piece together. So Turbo Tacky glue around the edge, and then definitely some around the centre. We want to make sure we get a really good stick with this. I'll just make sure I get into those corners a bit there. Okay, so now we're going to layer it together. I'll actually put that one down. Just making sure, I'm just going to check for a minute that I've got myself lined up so my one lines up with my one, etc. Pop that together. And I'm going to use some pegs to actually hold it all in place. But before I do that, while it's still got a bit of movement, I'm actually going to put together the top piece, which will go in here, and get that in just in case I've got to maneuver anything. So this comes as 2 pieces which just slot together. And then we pop them into here. And sometimes you get it in the right way the first time, other times you've got to maneuver it around a bit. Okay, so that's clicked into place. So now that I know that's going to fit right, I can just check that I've got all my corners neatly lining up. and then I'll just pop a few pegs on that just to hold it steady while that glue dries. It won't take too long. Then we just pop that to one side to dry and move on to our next stage. Okay, our next stage is going to be, so imagine we've just got both sets glued and pegged, those put to one side. Our next stage is going to be cutting out the 12 by 12 paper to match our covering, for the covering of the sides. Okay, so I've already marked, these come with what side they are marked on them. But I'm also going to just jot that on the back. That's number 2 and number 4. So that when I put the paper on this side and cover that bit up, I can still see, I still see the number. Okay, so you get supplied, if you're buying a kit from me, you get supplied with 2 bits of scrapbooking paper, or you would need 2 bits yourself. Position your piece where you see you're going to get as much pattern as you want to be seen, but you've also got to position it in such a way that you can get 2 panels off each page. Now, we don't need to cut into these edges. We can take our paper right out to the outer edges of the tabs, but we don't want any paper where the top and bottom tabs are, so I'll be cutting my paper across at that level, which means I can actually position that. Let me just check that I've got that lined up at the top nicely. Actually, I will trim off a bit there. Just looking that I've got the edges there lined up. Okay, now with a pencil, I'll just pencil in where I'm going to cut across the bottom, where I'm going to cut across the top, and these 2 points here, because that's where I'm going to cut that side. Now we need to make sure that we can fit this bit in without it coming into that area at all, but also where it's got some pattern that I like. So I'm wanting to get as much of these flowers in, keeping in mind that all these bits are going to be cut out. So I'm looking at what pattern is going behind this part of the panel. So we'll just bring that down a bit. Tuck it in close there. Okay, so roll across the top, roll down the side. Okay, so that gives me my cut lines. So I'll pop those to one side while I get my craft knife and ruler out and trim those. Okay, now that we've got those trimmed, I'm just going to double check that they do sit on my panels exactly where I want them, to see if there's any little bits of extra trimming that need to be done before I start sticking them on. And I can see I need to take a little bit more off the bottom there and a bit more off one side. I think that's why you get slight inaccuracies, is just because of the width of a pencil. What do you call the end of the pencil? That sometimes you've drawn your pencil line, but then depending on whether you cut to the inside of the outside or outside of that, that can affect exactly where your cuts are. And the more precise I am, both with these cuts and also when I start cutting out the little windows, the more precise I am, the less sanding that I have to do. So I'm really wanting to get this spot on. And I definitely don't want any bits hanging over, top or bottom, where these pieces have to slot into the base part, because if you've got any extra width there of paper, they don't slot in well enough. So that's why I'm being a little bit precise at the moment, just to make sure that I'm really happy with it. Now, make sure I also put the bits of paper with the right sides. So this one, we'll just lay that down on there again, making sure that it's as precise as we can get it. That one is looking pretty good. I'm just going to slice the smallest bit off the top there. Do make sure you hold your knife very firmly, because you don't want, when you're putting the pressure on your knife, you don't want it pushing the ruler across and making you go uneven that way. Okay, now the glue I'm going to use to stick this down is the Deco Pudge. So I'll just pop that into a small cup. And I'm using just a nice flat brush. Now I have found myself, when I'm doing these, because I'm not stopping to do a sealer or anything on the plywood, that I do need to not glue the whole lot in one go, because I find if I do that, that the glue dries before I get all the way down. Now that paper goes around that way, so it does help to get your paper around the right way too. So what I'm going to do is just put glue on the top third and not onto those tabs. As I've said, we don't want any extra thickness on those up and down tabs, but these ones, we do want the paper to stick right to the edge of that. We want it to stick right to the edge there, right to the edge around our arch. So some areas I'm making sure I get the glue right onto, others like the tabs I'm making sure I avoid. So first third, then lay our paper on. And at this stage I can manoeuvre that paper, making sure that I've got it exactly where I want, that these bits are all lining up. And it is. So now I can smooth down that top part. I usually try and work from the center out, so I'm smoothing out any bubbles. And now we start working down the sides. Again, about another third of the way, just so that glue doesn't have time to dry before we're actually sticking the paper down. So both sides. Smooth our paper down. Just pulling, even though I don't want to push in the center, I'm still going slightly angled out to make sure I'm smoothing that paper out. Now we get our last bit. And then smooth that one down. Making sure I've gone right along those edges, make sure they're nice, smooth, no air bubbles anywhere, right along the bottom. Okay, I'm going to repeat that with this piece, but when we're doing this one, of course, I need to put some glue all along those panels as well. Okay, now we just need to let that sit and dry for a few minutes. So while that's drying, making sure I'm nice and smooth, pop that one to one side as well. While that's drying, I'm going to come back to our base and our top and start painting them. So with the base, because the sides sit in to there, I only really need to paint that bit and just a bit in here, just in case anything shows. So I don't need to paint a lot of that. The top I do need to paint all of. Now I've mixed some paint already, and I've mixed it to match with some of the darker foliage, this deeper area in here. Of course, you can mix your paint colour to any colour you like. Just pick out something that's you like out of the papers. Now you can choose to paint around the edges there as well if you like. I do find that just the brown look from when it's been cut looks quite good, but if you like, you can choose to paint over all that area as well. Now I'm not painting over the numbers, they won't show because they'll be on the inside of the lantern, and I need those there to be able to line up my sides when I start putting this piece together. Okay, now let's move on to the top, which should be dry by now, so we'll just whisk all those pegs off. And again, I don't need to paint the edge there, I don't need to paint these edges, but I can if I like. Now this is the messy one because we're painting all the surfaces that we're going to be touching, because we're going up onto this as well. No, they should sit firm enough. Although, I'm actually now thinking the others that I've done, I think I did put a little bit of glue just on the side of the tabs before I put them in. But they should sit firm enough. So I should be holding it this way so you can see what I'm doing. Making sure I get right into that corner. Okay, that's got all those sides nicely covered. Now I do need to mention to my cameraman and husband Matthew that I'm about to start doing a lot of cutting and sanding. If you'd like to go and grab a book for a while, please do. Right, we're going to put these to one side. I'll pop my paint to one side and put my brush in some water so it doesn't get wrecked. So I'm just going to pop these over to one side to dry. And then start doing some trimming out of our papers. Okay, oh, that's a bit of paint there, so just clean my work area. Don't want to get paint where I don't want paint. Okay, so as I said, the neater you cut things out, the less sanding you do. So I'm going to try and cut these quite tight to the edge of the wood. It is a little bit tricky around those little bits there, but let's see how we go. That's not the idea. The idea is to stay within the shape. I find I turn one around so that I bring the knife out from the corners. all the way around that curve. Let's just see if we pop out yet. Not quite. Sometimes I need to turn it over and just see where the bit is that's not quite cut through. Excellent. Now these little scraps, you might be able to keep some of them for using on other projects. I kept a piece to one side so that I could match my colours when I was mixing my paints and use it actually on a sample of the pattern paper. Now that's a pretty horrible little bit there. Let's trim that out. Okay. All right. Right, so that's got those trimmed out. Now you end up, both from your cutting and from trimming that one large piece, you end up with some quite good size bits left over that you'll be able to use in your card making or on decorating journal pages. Okay, now our next stage is to do some sanding. Now you can use sanding blocks or other sanding tools. I find because I'm trying to get into very small areas that just a very basic emery board that's quite flexible has been quite a good tool, but I'm sure there's lots of good sanding tools out there that you can use. So I'm just going to go do a mixture of going across and down. I don't want to sand back up and push that paper, push a ridge up. I'm actually wanting to smooth it into the gap. So a mixture of sideways and then smoothing down is usually enough. As I said, if you're fairly neat with your cutting, you don't need to do a lot of sanding, but you can see I've got a little ridge of paper. Don't know if Matthew can see that on the camera. I don't know how to hold it so you can sort of see. I've got a little ridge sticking up. So if I just sand that way, that'll just smooth that down. Okay. Of course, this panel is the easiest one of the four to do. So now I'm just looking across, just checking that I haven't got any ridges that I don't want. We can just give that one a bit of a dust. Now the next one is the fiddly one. This one's going to take a few minutes. Oh, I just need to check top and bottom that I haven't got bits overlapping there. Let's just smooth that one as well. Okay. So yes, getting in amongst these small bits is a bit of a challenge. I find a mixture of sort of working from behind or smoothing that way. Again, we don't want to be pulling the paper up. We want it always to be pushing the paper down. And then you've sort of got to get around the curve of those little bits. It is nice if you can get a bit of a curve there because it'll make the panel look better when you actually finalise the project. But yeah, just do the best you can to get around those bits. I find a little bit of pushing around, a little bit of pulling it down. As you can see, this is why I'm using the little emery board, because it means I can get into these fine bits. Okay, we're now probably just going to fast forward a little bit while I get all of these done. Right, dust that bit off, dust off my work area, and we're ready to move on to the next stage. Okay, before I start actually sticking everything together, I need to put our vellum and star foil on the inside. So I've already got some pieces pre-cut. I could put these on with a glue or with some double-sided tape. Now with these bits, I haven't cut them with a lot of border, so I'll keep my double-sided tape fairly close to the actual window opening. Much easier to do this before you assemble the piece. Oops, I'm a bit too close there. Now also on this bit, now I'm on panel number 2, which I've just covered up with tape. Just going to jot a little 2 up there so I don't lose track of that. Okay, I'm going to put some thinner tape just on those bits as well. Just to hold this a little bit sturdier. Now don't overlap or else you'll have trouble. Now don't do a whole piece down there, just do 2 smaller bits. Or else yes, you have trouble getting the backing off. Right. Now this is the sort of thing where, same as when you're sometimes doing card making, it can be a good idea to take off some of the tape, but not all of it. Just so you've got a chance to get everything positioned right. Or you might find that for you it's easier just to pull the whole lot off and just lay it down carefully in one go. That's certainly just a personal thing as to how you find it easier to work with double-sided tape. Helps if I actually get the tape sticking down though. There we go. So now I can put my piece of vellum down on this half, get it positioned right, get my edges right, and then stick it to there. Okay, now we can lift it up and take out all our other bits of tape. So let's smooth down in the center and then push it out at the sides. Okay, that's one panel done. Okay, now this piece, our window, it's important that we just stick the top of this one. So I've got a wider piece of vellum to go on that. In fact, I'm just going to leave that sitting there so I can see how wide I can put the tape. Now the reason that we don't tape this one down on all 4 edges, and I'll show you in just a moment when I've got it stuck in place, is this is our access panel. So this is the back of the lantern, and it's important that we just stick at the top so that we can get our hand in to be able to turn our candles on or lights on or replace candles and lights. So that's a nice easy one. Now I've also got 2 other panels that I had already prepared and sanded, so we'll just get their vellum on. Now number 3 is our front panel, so I'll do that last. Let's just get normal vellum on this one. Okay, moving on to our star foil one. So the process is the same. The star foil seems to be, it's got a smoother side and a slightly rougher side. Both doesn't seem to matter which way round you put it for the light refracting. So I'm just choosing to put it with the smoother side facing out, just because I think that way it'll collect less dust. I don't know, is that a silly thing to be thinking of? But so it really doesn't matter which way round you put your star foil paper. Right, so that's now all of our pieces assembled. Before I actually start putting the whole lantern together, I'm just going to have a look at some of my other elements, because I've got some chipboard pieces, which I didn't paint earlier and should have. Instead I buried them. So quickly going to just have a look at where I'm going to put all the elements, and then I'll get those painted up. So I'm thinking that one could go from the bottom, but I really like the amount of flowers I've got there. So I think I'm going to bring that one in at the top. This one could come up from this side, or it could actually almost come down, sort of overlapping the opening there a little bit. I've also got some other die cut pieces around that I'm just not sure if I'm going to use these as well. We could tuck a little swirl in there. I've got some that are out of a black paper that might look nice. No, I think actually the cream works, and I might just do the one. Okay, so that's got me thinking of where I'm going to put everything. Let's get these bits painted. Right, with that piece done, let's start looking at our assembly. So, that's our front panel. Let's go to our back panel, which is number 4. Number 1. So as they slot in, let me show you this way. As they slot into the base, they should then slot in those sides, those tabs on the sides. Now this does get quite awkward, I do have to say. Actually, I might do the front one next. Number 3. Slot it down and push those corners in together. You do feel like you need 10 hands. Let's just get those ones in without losing the ones that we've already done. Then our last panel should bring everything together, but will actually probably push everything apart first. So I'm going to get the tabs in the bottom first, then bring the edges up. Oh, that just went beautifully. Let's just push all those corners in. Now, the really tricky part is getting the lid on. Now, because we didn't, before I do the lid on, it's just still drying a little bit, so I'm going to leave that for a few more minutes. I just want to show you a few bits. Because we didn't cut into the little tabs in our paper, it means that as we put this all together, our paper meets quite neatly there at the corner. If it's not exactly how you want it, if there's still a bit of a gap showing, you could put a little bit of cording up there, you could put some texture paste, just a little bit of paint sponged on. I'll show you on our other two lanterns what we did on those, and also talk a little bit about further embellishments. So you can see here that on these ones we cut the paper in around the tabs, so you end up with more of a obvious join. So on this one, Jackie's put just some texture paste on very lightly, smudging it like a rub-on, and she's also done a little bit of that up on the top of it as well. Also on the top, she's added extra die cuts. I'm just going to move that into the camera shot. There we go, extra die cuts there. On this one, it's gone for a steampunk look, so there's lots of cogs on the front. I'll just move our current one over a bit more so I can show more of this. So you've got all that on the top, and you've got all this on the front of it, which really makes it. There's also you can see there's little gems there in the center of some of the cogs. Now I'll just grab the other one. I'm having to maneuver them around a bit, but I want you to be able to see close up what we've done. So this one, as well as that's a die cut piece there. I've added extra flowers. There's a few little gems around as well. And I've on this one done flowers up on the top of it. Now on the edges of this one too, I went with the texture paste, but I did it quite thick. So you can see, actually this edge is this one's a bit better, sorry, this edge here. You can see I've actually got texture paste and put on really thick, so I've completely covered that join, but I won't need to do that as much with the one that we're currently working on. I've also done some of that around the edge here, and then I've used some of the same texture paste on the top through a stencil. Okay. Okay, so let's see how we go at fitting this lid on. This is the tricky one. So I've got number 4 there, and we've got panel 4 here, so it's going to go that way. Now you might find, as I did, that it was easier to position it by tipping it on its side a bit, so that I could see, or even upside down, so you can see where those slots are, making sure that I've got my corners where I want them. Then I can start to just on the top, just give a push down until that all clicks into place. Sometimes this does take a little bit of force to get it actually to all click into place properly. I can see there that that one's not, just tip it that way, and you can see the gap there. So that one's not actually clicked in yet. So I'm just going to give that a bit more of a wiggle. Just tilting it around and checking that all those bits are all clicked in. Wonderful. Okay, now we can start decorating our front. How cool is that starting to look? That is just gorgeous, isn't it? So our front panel, let's take it back around to there. That's our front panel with the most decorative parts on it. So our first bit is going to be to put some glue on our little chipboard pieces. Now I did decide I was going to use just the one of these coming down that way, so I might just work out where that one's going to go and pop it on first. No, I'm going to need to stick some others on just to be able to see where that positions. Okay, so we're just going to get some of our Turbo Tacky glue and pop it on. Now this, you can also, it's quite a good nozzle on here, but I have found for some of this work it is actually quite good to put it into even one of the smaller applicator bottles with the little metal nozzle, because that gives you even finer control over the glue. And I mustn't forget to leave myself somewhere to hang on to it while I'm putting the glue on. I'm mainly looking at making sure I'm getting blobs of glue on joins, on curves, corners, that sort of thing. It's going to stick even if I don't have glue over everywhere, but I just want to make sure that all those pointy bits, sticking out curves, that all those have got a bit of glue on them. So I'm really not squeezing the glue bottle much at all. I gave it a little squeeze just to get it started. Now it's just oozing at just a nice rate. Now sometimes it's good to have, sometimes it's easy to pick up things, but other times it's actually good to have a little pair of tweezers on hand just for picking up pieces like this and manoeuvring them around. And I think I do have a set right here. So I'm just going to grab that in a spot where, actually I'll grab it down lower. Then we can position this. Just get forward so you can see what I'm doing. Position it to the top there. And I think I'm a little bit off center. Let's just push it across a little bit. I hope that's looking good. Maybe just push it a little bit more. It's got it there. Okay, now just press down. Of course I didn't need to put glue over everywhere, did I? Because there's all that bit in the middle that's not glued to anything. But it's hard to know when you're actually gluing what bits are going to stick on and what aren't. So I think it's probably safer to glue everywhere. Now I'm just going to put a bit of pressure on those bits where I really need it to stick, just for a couple of moments. Down that centre part as well. Okay, now I just double check that I did want this bit coming down here. Actually, could sit about there, couldn't it? And then we had our little extra piece coming across that way. Now, of course, I'm changing my mind, and this is what you'll do. You'll try something and then go, oh, but what if I did that or this? And that's okay. It's okay to mess around with it a few times and see what's working for you. Is it better to have... I think that's nicer. Okay, so I'm going to glue this piece in next. Just be careful, I haven't got paint on my fingers. So that's going to come, so it's only that bit that doesn't need glue. So let's get our Turbo Tacky glue on the go again. Just move the lantern slightly out of my way, being right-handed. Definitely get the very end with glue on. Now that was the piece that didn't need glue right to the end. And having a bit without glue means that's a great one to use with my tweezers to pick it up. Now let's just look at where it's going to go before we place it down. There we go. And again, just a little bit of pressure for mere moments just to make sure that it's stuck. And what were we doing with this one? It was going to come down that way, wasn't it? Yep, okay. So that's actually going to be that part that doesn't need the glue on. Okay, Turbo Tacky it again. This one's got some very fine bits, as I discovered when I was doing the painting. Right around that curve. Not sure how much is going to stick over, so I will put a bit of glue on that blob part there. Just smooth that right up to there. Good. Now, that's the last of our glue for the moment, so I'm just going to close the lid. Okay, let's position this bit in. So I'm going to want that edge parallel with the edge of the lantern. So we're going down here. I just need to tip the lantern back a bit so I can see exactly where I'm putting it. Oh, that's really cool. I like that. Now this colour that I've painted, I did want it to bring out this deepness of the leaves, but it is a bit of quite flat. So I'm going to put some little bits of the gold, it's not actually gold, it's called Bling. The Bling Colour Blast Paste, texture paste. I'm going to use it as a rub-on to add some accents to these bits. And I'm also going to use it to stencil a little bit on the top. And that's where I'm going to use this fan stencil from Scapbooking'n'Craft, which is a similar pattern to what's in the pink part. See that lovely pattern there? Quite Art Deco looking. So let's do a little bit of texture pasting on top. And then our last stage will be to come in and add some extra little gems and things if we want to. You can do, from this stage, I mean basically the lantern is done now, but from this stage you can add whatever extra embellishments you want, whether it be flowers, gems, the stenciling. So I'm going to choose on this one to do some stenciling, but it's really up to you where you go to from here. Okay, let's bring that forward so that we can see. Okay, so our front panel's there, so I think I'll have the stenciling going. Or would it look nice coming sort of towards? That could look quite effective. I don't need to stencil the whole area, it's just adding a little bit of pattern to it. I think that'll look quite nice. Okay, so open up my Bling paste. A little bit on the spatula. Like that side. And I like to put the paste on the back of the spatula. I find it makes the application easier. Let's pop our stencil in here. I want it so that that piece of the pattern ends up just on the corner there. So then we pop our texture paste on. Now I'm not going to be getting full coverage everywhere, so once I've got a bit of good coverage on those front bits, I'm then going to let it be a little bit more random so it doesn't look so obvious where it finishes. Just going back for a little bit more paste where I think I need some extra bits. gently peel that away. So it's just creating that gorgeous little bit of extra pattern on there. Very cool. Now if I wanted it to go all the way around the sides, I'd probably need to wait for this to dry and then come back and do the sides, because I don't want to put the stencil down and have it touching where there's wet paste. So at this stage I'm just going to do the corners and see how I like it. And I do have a bit, it gets messy, so I have a bit of paper towel here because I'm going to get it all over my hands. So yeah, just for doing some cleaning. Now it's not going to line up in exactly the same spot on each panel because it's not, I don't think we're actually exactly square. So I'm just going to put that down, hold it in place and get some paste. Get good coverage on some bits and just some random coverage on other bits. It's not, because I've got this, I'm just using this corner of the stencil, it's not something where I'm ever going to be able to get full coverage, like if you're working on a card front or something. So it's best that I deliberately make it random. But I think it's very cool. It's a great colour bling. It's a soft gold but with loads of shine to it. Okay, so that's our 4 bits at the top there done. Looking nice. Just give that stencil a wipe because texture paste does dry and is very hard to clean off the stencils once it dries. So I'm just going to, I've got my water spritzer bottle here, just going to give that a spritz with water and a wipe across the paper towel. Same with my spatula. I can give them a wash later if I get most of it off now. Another way is to have just a bucket of water standing by and just drop anything that you've used texture paste on into that bucket of water. So now it's up to me to say, what else do I want to do? Let's bring it back around so you can see this front panel. So I'm just going to pick up some little bits of texture paste on my finger. Now I don't want much on it all, and we're just going to come in and, as I said, using it almost like a rub-on. But if I was to use a rub-on here, it would be a different gold to what I've got up on the top. So that's why I'm choosing to use the texture paste this way. So it's just lifting that a little bit so it's not too flat. And I'm just going to try, I'm thinking of using some as on the corners, but I don't want to do it on the front panel first in case I don't like it. So I'm just coming to the back area. We're just going to do a little bit of gold down the edge there. as I said, this is all totally up to you. You could do a little bit of ribbon or lace or something, or cording, or definitely the texture paste. And I'm also going to do a little bit along the top edge there too. So yeah, I'm just playing from here, just seeing how much I like. Let's go around to this edge here. Now I've started, I think I have to keep going. Just going to dab a bit along there. How much you do is totally up to you, whether you do it a bit blobby or whether you do it just like I did on the elements at the front, just more like a texture paste. I mean, sorry, more like a rub-on. Or we could make it quite, if we wanted to, like I did on the burgundy one, we could make it quite heavy along that edge there if we wanted to. Which I think I quite like actually. It does cover up that join between the two panels of the top and bottom very well. The more I'm doing, the more I want to do. Okay, let's just keep going. So now I'm scraping it on just a little bit thicker. There's some gorgeous colours in the Bee Arty texture paste, so you can really find one that's going to match your piece beautifully. Okay. A little bit down the edge. Oh, that's a bit too much on my hand in one go. Okay, now I need to stop and clean me because I'm now covered in texture paste. So, a bit of spritz of water for my hands as well. In fact, I'm covered in texture paste, paint. This is a messy project, but my goodness, how good is it looking? Now, I'm just popping the lid straight on the texture paste. I will come in a few minutes and put a bit of either put Glad Wrap or another sealing paper in there to stop any air getting into that. If I press something flat onto that paste and stop the air getting to it, my paste is going to last much longer. Right, okay, do we put some little gems on? I think so. Now, I've got some cream ones here, or I've got the wine coloured ones. I think because I've gone with more of a greeny tone in the paint, I think just some of the cream ones will be nice. These ones are called Chantilly. These are from Uniquely Creative. They can be on the chipboards, they can be, oops, it's a bit easier with tweezers or easier with my hands. I think that will look better with another couple there. Maybe another small one. Just down the bottom there. Things often look better in threes. Now, if you're doing this at home, I'd recommend waiting till your texture paste dries before you start doing your gems and things like that. Let's see what else. So just some random ones, just again lifts it, it gives more dimension to it. I think that's about it. But it really does depend on you how much you add to it. Like as I showed you before with the one from the Songbird Melody paper, where I've actually put the flowers up the top. So this one here where we've got flowers onto that handle. This one I've done a lot more texture paste, so it might look nice just to leave it as that. Maybe I'll come in and do a little bit of texture paste on there. But this one, by adding the flowers in, is very pretty. So it really is totally up to you. I'll put some more photos up on Facebook of some other samples that we've got done, just to give you ideas of different colours. But it's just such a beautiful project to do. Let's just, we've got our lights on in that one. Let's just pop a little candle into our new one. I'll just turn that on. So this is where having that flap at the back is good. If I can turn this around without touching any wet bits. So this is where I've got that flap left open, so I can just pop the candle in and just lift that vellum so it flops back down again. And then once we turn back around to the front, you'll see that star pattern happening because of that beautiful star foil paper. So there's our project. Isn't that fantastic? So just by using scrapbook papers, different mediums, the chipboards, we get this beautiful finished item. Thank you very much for watching today, and we'll see you again next time.